guys, Emma here, and today I'm going to be talking about Twin Peaks again by picking some random topics from this box filled with bits of paper on which topics are written and filled also with jay feathers. So let's get going. Firstly, I want to apologise if you hear any noises because there are dozens of kids playing outside the window and you can hear them screaming. So, okay, let's get going now. Positive representations of LGBT community in Twin Peaks. Okay. I thought the David Duchovny cameo of Denise in season 3 The Return was very respectfully done.
Good luck.
I like that Denise had progressed to that position of power in her career. I like that there was less of a question about her identity and her position in that workforce. I thought that the tone was appropriate given the social climate that we're now in comparison to how Denise/Dennis was portrayed in the earlier run. Saying that, I do think that Dennis/Denise's openness about gender issues in the earlier run made that easier to play off comedically. And whilst I understand that transgender issues can be very difficult for some people, I think that in the earlier run we didn't partake in that story as much. I think we were more exposed to it in The Return when Gordon Cole started talking about Denise's history and transitioning, and at first I did wonder if it was the right tactic to take script-wise for Gordon Cole to be trying to further his own agenda by reminding Denise of her transitioning history and the difficulties she might have faced going through that. But however, I have to take away from that scene the line which Gordon Cole says about, "I told them to fix their hearts or die," and that to me is a message of solidarity, saying that we stand with the LGBT community. And that from not just the character of Gordon Cole, but it feels like it's from the Twin Peaks community, from everybody working on the show and perhaps everybody watching it as well. How separate were Dale and Mr. C? Was Mr. C there in season 1 and season 2 and Fire Walk with Me? Okay, so I'm going to assume that this question means whether we could see any hints of Mr. C in Dale Cooper prior to him being a separate entity. So if I just reverse that question a little bit and think about when we first met the doppelganger in the Red Room, he was an incredibly raw version of evil. He was very animalistic, he was very similar to Bob. In fact, they aped each other in behaviours, in their laughing, wild running around in the Red Room that didn't seem to serve any purpose but mischief. And when we saw him come out of the Black Lodge, his human behaviours weren't quite there yet. So, you know, when he was in the hotel room and he was squeezing the toothpaste, banging his head, I'm not sure those activities actually served any kind of purpose other than to enact chaos and to release some kind of beastly urge. But I think if that was the early version of the doppelganger, then did Mr. C learn to be more like Cooper as he stayed in the world? Because by the time we meet him 25 years later, he is pretty proficient at existing in the world. He has, well, I was going to say friends, but I don't know if I'd call them friends. He is able to control people pretty well. And I guess he's assumed a lot of qualities that Dale Cooper has. So he's methodical, he's hardworking, he's determined. Aside from these things, obviously, he is Cooper's shadow self. So he's acted on impulses which may have been there for Cooper, but which Cooper's response to probably defines the difference between the two of them, if that makes any sense. So for instance, how Dale Cooper treated Audrey in comparison to how Mr. C treated Audrey. As I said before, I don't think that Cooper is a perfect human being. He makes mistakes just like anybody. But behind those mistakes, I think there's an unending need to do good that means that he never feels manipulated by those dark forces, by the Jowday force of negativity. It's an interesting question, actually, if you think about life forms and kind of forces that exist in Twin Peaks and what kind of influence that has on personality and character and direction in life. If you are delineating that there is a good force and there is a bad force, which is a definite in Twin Peaks, then which side do you fall? I don't know if I answered that question in its entirety. I don't know. Okay, go on to the next one. What are the most haunting scenes in The Return? So for me, the ending is pretty haunting. The moment from Cooper's confusion to the scream to what follows as well, and also including in that the credits. Strange that the credits actually remind me of when Lost, the series, ended and they put that footage of the plane crash up, which wasn't intentional. The network decided to do that actually, but regardless of what it meant for Lost, a lot of people returned to that moment of horror and death in the plane crash, and it formed their opinions about what had happened in the show, but it also took them to an emotional place which was really intense, I think. And I felt like the same way when I saw the Twin Peaks season 3 ending with Laura and Dale back in the Black Lodge with that very, very sad music. Although I didn't feel it when I first watched the episode, everything from when Carrie and Cooper, or Laura and Cooper if you like, were in the car driving feels very heavy with atmosphere to me. And the things that they discuss, trying to make your way through the fog of that conversation and come to some agreement with yourself about what it means, is very difficult. But it leaves a lasting impression in your mind, but your heart as well. Other moments that I think were haunting were the scene of Ruby, which actually echoes Laura's scream to some degree. I just thought that Ruby, she was so mouse-like and out of place in that scene at the roadhouse where she was manhandled and thrown onto the floor like a piece of trash. Her crawling through the crowd and nobody looking at her, nobody asking what was the matter. There's a lot of comments on that. It feels like a cry for help. It feels like she's saying that she's here, she's different, she's out of place in this world. She's in a society that is unthinking to some degree, and she wants to express herself, and the only way she can is by that guttural scream. There are quite a few other moments in Twin Peaks The Return that I think are haunting. For instance, when the boy is knocked over by Richard. It's a very revealing moment in terms of the religious or spiritual structure. Sorry about that screaming. Which is being explained to us. But in terms of the emotional impact of that scene, nothing can really detract from the fact that it's an absolute tragedy for that mother and for the little boy. Just one more I'm going to mention is when Cooper is in the restaurant. He is dining with the Mitchum brothers and the piano music is playing in the background. It's a slight awakening of sorts in Cooper's journey to free himself from the Dougie persona, from the stultified mind of Dougie, if you like. but it also reminds me of Cooper's loss a little bit, and the fact that he had his life taken away from him. Yeah, the music is very poignant in that scene. Angelo Badalamenti did a wonderful job on the score there. Goes right to the soul, and it feels like a melody that encompasses Cooper's loss and his pain. Okay. Which character do you identify with the most? Well, I identify with Agent Cooper. When I was a kid, I really looked up to characters like that on television. So Benton Fraser and Sam Beckett, you know, characters who were inherently good and wanted to do good in the world. I don't know if that was because I personally had a viewpoint that human beings had a dark nature and that it was an unusual thing to be so pure and so driven to do good in that kind of world. But for me, Agent Cooper's vision and everything about his lifestyle as well really resonated with me. So not only his good intentions, the way he treats people, but things like his philosophical approach to life, his exercise regime, his work ethics, the way he makes friends. So I identify with him to a large degree. In The Return, I have to say I identified greatly with Dr. Amp. If Dr. Amp is a character, of course, I don't know if he's just an exaggeration of Dr. Jacoby or whether he is a construct created for show, created for views or listens, if you like. But no, I'm going to say Dr. Amp is a character and that I identify with what he says. So what he says, a lot of people have interpreted as being a parody on conspiracy theorists, but other people have pointed out that Frost and Lynch may actually be inclined to think like this themselves. Certainly in regards to Lynch, I know that he has asked political questions in the past. So I myself am a huge questioner of political policies, drives, the rights of the people, environmental issues, economic issues. I'm always looking into corruption in society, wondering why people are allowed to get away with it. And I think if you're not asking those kind of questions, then you must have your head buried deep in the sand. So yes, Dr. Amp does come across as being slightly unhinged. But I think what he says is very true. I like the fact that he actually has some magical thinking behind it as well. That he's conjuring up some kind of hope and spiritual solution to what perhaps is a problem that can't be solved. How difficult is it to rearrange society at this point in the history of planet Earth? How difficult is it to reset financial systems so that things are fairer for people? I'm going to set myself off now, so I'm going to shut up. But yeah, Dr. Amp and Agent Cooper I identify with. Please tell me who you identify with, because I know that there are so many interesting characters in Twin Peaks and we all get something from one character or another. So I'm going to leave it there today, but thank you very much for watching. And if you want to add a comment to the box, please do so by leaving something in the section below and I will add it. I'm going to be doing a video each week until the topics are all gone, so I hope you can come next time and see you then. Bye.